How to replace a riding mower idle puller bearing. Easy DIY fix. Does your mower sound like this? If so, this is what will be next. You can make this easy repair with a new pulley, but in this video, I'll walk you through replacing a worn idler puller bearing. I will show you how to go from this to this. This common repair can save you hundreds compared to taking it to a shop. I will show you the basic tools needed for the job, step-by-step removal, and safety pit. This repair should take 30 to 45 minutes and can extend your mower's life significantly. It's perfect for anyone looking to save money and maintain their own equipment. So let's get started. I do have a video showing how to remove this mower back up above. Let's get a closer look. There we are. This is where this pulley gets mounted. Right here is where it normally would seize up. This seized so tight that it couldn't turn at all. With the force of the belt, it ripped this pulley off and shot it across the lawn. But the belt kept spinning and was rubbing against the stud and the remainder of the bearing. That's what caused all the smoke. So before we get started, we have to remove this. Before we get started, we have to remove this part. We will need it later on. This is the part I'm talking about. See right here? That's part of the bearing that's stuck onto this bushing. And this part right here, this is the bushing. This is the bearing, this is the bushing. This bushing is the part we need. We'll have to get that bushing out of the bearing. As you can see, the bearing in here is completely gone. Usually you'll just find them where they're either rusted or frozen, but this one must have been frozen solid because it just tore right out. So we have to open up this pulley and get this new bearing in. And the way I'm going about opening up this pulley is to drill out each one of these rivets. You can also use a grinder to grind these rivets down, but this wheel is a little too big. If you have a worn out wheel or a small grinder that could get in here, you could take that route. But what I'm going to do is get a punch and get a center punch on all these rivets all the way around, and then I'm going to drill it out. Once I drill these rivets out, I'll be able to split this pulley and put the new bearing in. Let me get this on something solid and we'll proceed with taking these rivets out. I'm going to go with a wider bit. We don't have to drill all the way through. Not yet. Okay, that's close enough. Alright, now that I have this drilled out, here's a safety tip. Do not brush this off with your hand. Get a little sharp brush, a broom, whatever you have, and sweep it off that way. And I just knocked the camera over. Once these stick in your hand, it isn't any fun getting them out. So sweep them into something. Okay. Now I'm going to proceed to knock these rivets out with a punch. Okay. See how it's starting to come out? I'm going to drill these out a little bit more. I didn't get enough of the heads off. We're drilling just to get the head of this rivet out. It should come out without tearing the bottom one out. Okay, we're back at it. That'll pop right out. I thought I had enough of it drilled out the first time around, but that wasn't the case. Okay, this one's giving me a little trouble. And so much for that. I'm going to ream this out with a smaller drill bit just to get that little piece off. When we split this pulley, you don't want to bend it. Once I drill out the rest of these rivets, I'll be back to show you how we get them out. You got to be careful when you're drilling like this too, that this pulley doesn't spin. Another thing you could do is clamp this down to the table that you're working on. Okay, that should be it. I should be able to split this now. These still have a little bit of a grip on it. I'm going to use a screwdriver to get in between the two halves. As I mentioned before, a drill press would work really nice on this. You could use a hand drill, as you saw me use, and because I didn't drill these holes straight through, I had a little problem getting these rivets out. I had to play with them a little bit. I had to use this chisel to get it on the other side to pull them out. Now, once you get all these rivets out, this will split apart. And this is where the old bearing was. This is what's left of the bearing. This is what it should look like, and this is what was left. I mean, this thing really got torn up. Let's see what we got here. I have a package of these bearings, and the bearing size on this is 1623 RS, 1623 RS, but it's a little too small, just a shade too small. Normally when you're replacing the bearing, you just replace the number that's over here, that's on the bearing itself. This one, the bearing was gone, so what I did, I just measured across the diameter, and this was the diameter. But another issue, this piece had to be pulled out of the old bearing. This is part of the old bearing right here. To get this piece out, what I did, I just stuck this between the jaws of a vise, this piece here, and I used this shaft to punch it through. What this does is close the inner diameter of the bearing, so the bolt that's on the deck will go through. This diameter is the diameter of the bolt. Now, I don't know if I can make this work. If there was a way I could get this bearing inside that other race, I could hollow this out somewhat and get this bearing to fit in there. It's not off by much, just this inner ring. And I could use this as a spacer and get this bearing in. Well, this isn't going to make it. Bottom line, this wasn't the right bearing. I ordered a new package of bearings. It only took a day coming to Amazon. I'll have the link for it down below if you could use these. I could have bought a new pulley. Would have took maybe the same amount of time if I got it off Amazon. But that would defeat the purpose of this video. I want to show you the difference in sizes. This is just slightly bigger in the diameter. It also has a higher depth. Let me see if I can get this on the camera. It has a little wider diameter, but it's also slightly higher. We'll use this filler gauge at the top You can see we can fit this one in the underneath. So this is 0.024 inches higher than this one here. Now to put this together, normally I would drill these out a little bigger, either 7/32 or 1/4 inch, and use nuts and bolts to put in here. But the bolts I have are long. I could cut them down and use them like that, but instead I'm going to use a welder, and I'm going to weld these pieces together. The nuts and bolts are a better alternative, because if ever you have to take this apart again, it'd be a lot easier to just unscrew the nuts and bolts and have to drill out the welds. But like I said, this is just another way of doing it. Nuts and bolts or welding, either way it'll work. Let me show you how I'm going to set this up to weld it. Before I do that, I just want to show you the part number that I have on here. Again, this is off of Amazon. I purchased these bearings before for different projects from this company, and they worked very well. I didn't have any issues with them. For this particular pulley, the bearing size is 6203-2RS. In this package, they come 10 to a pack. They come in a case like this, and if you hold on to these, more than likely you'll be using them again in some other part of your machine. Pick up mowers and flip them or work on them for other people, you'll definitely be using these again. And I just want to point out this tip. Regardless who I buy the bearings from, I always remove the seal to check to make sure there's grease in here. They're made in the factory, things go wrong, there may or may not be enough grease in here, but it's very easy to open up. You don't want to bend the seal, and you just check. Now this one here is packed with grease. There's nothing to do for this one other than closing it up, but the one I'm going to be using was low on grease, and I did have to put some grease in here. Same package of bearings, one had plenty of grease, this one needed grease. This is that fitting that I had to knock out of the old bearing. I didn't video it, but the way I got this in here, I cleaned up any debris that was on it. I put a little dab of grease on it. I placed a block of wood on this end so the pulley is resting on the outer ring, and on this side here I just held it until I closed the vise a little at a time, and I pressed it in like that. You don't need to press to put this back in, the vise will work. So now this is the one I'll be using. Also, I cleaned this out in here really good. There was a lot of grease caked up in here, and that little bit of grease that was caked in here made this a little too proud, and the pulley didn't set right. Another thing I did was wire wheel the rust off here, and there was a little rust where the belt was laying on this pulley for all that time, and I just wire wheeled it. Not a grinder, just a wire wheel. Just buffed it out a little bit. Now you could paint this if you want, and if you do paint over here where the belt goes, it's only going to rub off. So I'm putting this together. This is how the holes would line up if you were going to put the nuts and bolts in it, but I'm going to tack weld it, so I'm going to turn it a little bit, and I'm going to tack weld it first on one side, then on the other side. I'm using this clamp just to hold it down so it doesn't move when I'm welding. Okay, this is going to hold the two pieces together. You don't have to clamp on it tight. And I'm going to just spot weld each one of these spots here. I'm going to move the camera back, not to ruin the lens on the camera. And I'm just using this Harbor Freight welder that I generally use for little jobs like this. Once I get this together, I'll show you what it looks like. From there, we'll go to mounting it back onto the deck. Here it is. Exactly. You don't have anything. That's what you want. These pulleys should spin without any noise whatsoever. All right, let's install this pulley. We have the carriage bolt that comes in from underneath. You have to hold it up with one hand. Have the pulley. This pulley had a washer on it. Putting a new nut on it. Well, for those of you who stuck with me to the end, here's the biggest tip, or if you would, heads up. I remember thinking about this, but in my haste to get this video done, get this pulley together, so I could upload it in time for the weekend, it slipped my mind. This pulley is not put together correctly. It does spin, no problem with that. The bearing works, everything's fine, the connection's good. But here's the big mistake I made. Pay attention to this. This is very important. See this bushing that sticks out? It has to come out the bottom end. When it's out on this end, as you saw on the machine outside, this wheel scrapes. It doesn't have the clearance. So this bushing has to come out the shallow end of the pulley. What a goof that was. But now to correct this, I have to grind out all these welds, both sides, flip it over, and put it back together again. None of us like showing our mistakes, but I figured this was important enough to show those of you who are following me out there not to make this mistake. Or even if you have it bolted together wondering how come this pulley isn't working right. Well, that's a wrap. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, let me know. Give it a like. It does help. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe. Hit that Joe Z button. And if there's anyone else you know of that may find this video useful, helpful, or entertaining, pass it along. It does help. And it's greatly appreciated. Until next time, happy mowing and stay safe.